Hello my friends, this is FC7 and today I am sharing my playthrough of Scouting Ahead. This is the second task in the Gribbles series. So if you've come here from my previous video Into the Hills, this is directly after that one, pretty much. The three tasks that he offers, Necros can solo easily, so I'm going to share my playthrough here. So, Scouting Ahead, there are some summoners, but there's a way around it. If you zone in after getting the task and the mosquitoes are up, you do not have to worry about any mob summoning. If you zone in and there are, I think they're like plant-looking mobs, then I would recommend just getting a different task until you get the ones with the mosquitoes. Because summoners, in this instance, it just is time consuming. I mean, you could pet tank them, but I recommend just doing a mix of aggro-kiting and root rotting, which is what I'm doing. And in case you did not come from my previous video, this is a level 85 heroic that I obtained. And I am just going through some tasks, sharing my playthrough as if I was level 85. Because I do have two other necromancers, and they're both level 110. But obtaining that hero character has given me the opportunity to revisit some of these old tasks and share them. If somebody creates a heroic necromancer and they're interested in soloing, then hopefully this video will help. So when you zone in and you know that you have the mosquitoes for sure, you have a little bit of space at the front of the zone here, and I usually just aggro-kite or root rot the first ones at the entrance. I don't think there's much splitting that's needed. Be careful of the roamer that roams down the hill here. So I'll just pull this guy. And the two most important AAs for this soloing this zone is Persistent Paralysis and Encroach in Darkness. So this is called root rotting, where you just use Persistent Paralysis, knock the mob back, and just dot them with your damage over time spells. And as you can see, his health is dropping. And I'm just going to look for some different spells here. Because this is kind of mana intensive, I'm going to use a rune. It adds an extra 5 mana regen per tick. And it also helps in case you get hit. So that guy's gone. Move on to the next mosquito. And line of sight is a little bit wonky here, so just beware. And I noticed on this heroic character, Persistent Paralysis, the timer seems to be long. I guess I really didn't notice that on my other two necromancers. The recast timer. So I would just root rot one off and then aggro-kite while the timer counts down. But there really is no problem. The mobs in this instance don't seem to have a lot of hit points. So what I would recommend is soloing Into the Hills and then afterwards just grabbing Scouting Ahead. You can do these back to back, and there's also a third task that unlocks after completing this one. So if you have the time, just do all three. It's a good way to gain experience as well as currency. The currency can be used to purchase some really nice items. So what I'm going to do is just look at the mana regen, and when I cast the Ruin, see how much extra it gives me. So it gives me like 4 extra mana regen per tick, and a tick is every 6 seconds. So it's not huge, but like I said, mana intensive task. Be sure to have your Lich up and have Death Bloom ready. Death Bloom will bring your hit points down while giving you mana regen in return. But if you're not careful, you could die from it. And I decided to do this one completely solo. I know with Into the Hills I had my mercenary up, my healer mercenary, which is always something you could do, but I decided just to do this one without. If you want to be really careful, have your healer mercenary with you. But I decided just to do this without, see how it went, and it worked out fine. And I'm going to cast Death Bloom right now because my mana is getting low. And if you're kiting a mob while you press it, you can just life tap your health back. And if I had time, I would have gotten some Hugger's Elder Beads from the casino. You can tap those as well, because it creates an eye that scouts ahead, but you can also target that eye and cast life tap on it. That's a little trick some Necros use if they're losing life due to Lich or an AA like Death Bloom or Blood Magic. But in this case, I have a Mosquito I can tap, so if I can get line of sight. So the first part of the task was killing the mosquitoes that linger on the path. Just get rid of these guys. I always leave these 3 for last, or close to last. Sometimes they require some splitting, but sometimes you can just single pull them. So I'll target this one, cast Darkness, and he came single. Root him away, start to dot. And by now my mana is pretty much regened okay, so I can continue my dot rotation. I'm going to click off some of these spell gems, the buff icons. So there's a roamer up here, and I'll just snag him. Kite him around. And if you ever see that menu pop up with the mounts that I have in my UI, my inventory UI, I apologize, but I have it set to my center mouse key, the mouse wheel. And whenever I am kiting, sometimes I accidentally press that inner wheel and it pops up. If you're ever wondering. Usually it doesn't bother me, but when I'm actually doing recordings, I know it can be intrusive. And in these types of videos, I do show my entire UI, so I know some people had some questions about my UI in my last video, or most of my videos, but this is a UI that I developed over the last 19, 20 years. So it works for me. Let's get rid of this mosquito. Move on to the next part of the quest soon. And I'm also using this on a ultra-wide monitor. So I would recommend, if you want to get a clear view of the action on the screen without any intrusive UI elements, just using an ultra-wide monitor. It works for me, and it has for many years now. So I have one rooted and kiting one, and we're almost done with this part of the quest. Send off some swarm pets, and always send them towards a mob when you're kiting and not when they're rooted, because they will die pretty quickly. Swarm pets usually don't get aggro when you're aggro kiting. There are the rare occasions, but doesn't happen too often. So what I'm trying to do is find the spells that cast an illusion on my pet. And I know they exist, but they don't seem to be here with the heroic character. Unless I just can't find it. But I don't like the Spectre illusion, and I want to cast an illusion skeleton onto him, but I just can't find it. It must be something that isn't included with heroics. I might have to make a trip to TSS and buy the spells myself. I know I could go into the marketplace and try to find something that would be okay to cast on him, but I don't think it's worth it right now. Alright, so this one's almost dead. Move on to the next one. So my pet got aggro somehow. I'll either try to steal aggro back or just have him feign death. I highly recommend using the feign death for your pet AA. It can come in handy. Although I should have a pet haste on him, which I don't. But that's okay, I really don't need it right now. If I get some time, I'm going to try to go to the Lost Dungeons of Norath raid and get him the clicky that will haste him. It's like a shoulder item. I think I've mentioned it on my channel before. I was the first one to discover and upload it to Alakazam's. So if you look up, I think it's like the Shroud of something, and it's in a Lost Dungeons of Norath raid. And I was surprised because it was never uploaded to Alakazam's. So if you ever look up that item, it has my name on it. FC7. And there's plenty of space on either side of this pathway so that you shouldn't get hit. Okay, at this point I snared one and the other came running, but if I just Death Effigy it off, I can pretty much snare them both here. And root him off. And go after this next one. So that task stage is complete, and now it's on to the next step. And this next step is just as easy. But we'll get rid of this mosquito first. So, on to these guys. And the one thing I've noticed after doing a million of these tasks is that they're very resistant to disease, so don't use any disease spells against these guys. Although I don't have any in my current lineup, my current dot lineup anyways, but when you start using the swift dots, there's a disease one that always got resisted. So then I attempted to use other disease spells to see if it was a resistance issue, and sure enough, they're very resistant against disease, but fire, poison, magic, corruption, they all seem to land, so that's good. And Death Bloom again because I'm running low on mana. But that means I'll probably need to break root to life tap. Always use your Spire when it's up to increase damage over time. So now that mob number 1 is gone, it's on to number 2. And again, you should have this whole open area in back of you where everything's clear if you need space to aggregate. Sometimes I snare 2 or 3 at a time, and this bring them back here, and by the time you're at the front of the zone, if you go back that far, they should be gone. Looks like my pet has grabbed aggro, but I can fight him for it. Sometimes this step will include collecting amulets or something, so always keep an eye on your task, your quest window, because there have been times when I've almost missed collecting those amulets and just assume that it's just a kill. So you have to kill a certain number of them, but sometimes you do have to pick up some amulets in this step. So with heroic adventures, they're never really the same. They can be different every time. So we got an AA point. So the thing about these heroic adventures is the experience really doesn't come from killing the mobs. It comes from finishing the task. So the majority of the experience is at the end when you hail the final NPC and finish the task. Then you get all the experience. There's like a sliver of experience from each mob, but it's really nothing. I believe they did that so that people couldn't just request tasks and just experience from the mobs in the zone. Now at this point, I almost died because I wasn't expecting to get bashed and stunned so much. On my main necromancer, he must have some kind of stun immunity or something that works pretty well, but I almost died here because whenever you turn your back on a mob, they can bash you, and as soon as they bash you, they stun you. But I got lucky here. Whisper Wind's a good way to get out of it. So that's why I was trying to mash on that. And I will try another rune. What I should have done at the start of the task is just had my mercenary out and had her cast the cleric hit point buff on me. And then I also have my own hit point buff that I could have up as well right now, but I felt like I really didn't need it because this isn't too hard. So yes, ideally you want to have your cleric buff up, and then your self buff up for hit points, and then a rune. But I've done this so many times that I really feel like I don't need it, so. On to the next few. And get this guy. I also have to remember to snare after I root. Get some mana back. And life tap will break root, but that's okay. You can turn the root rot into an Agrokite. Alright, on to these next two. A nice trick, if you have two like that, you can just snare one, and then when the other one comes running, just Death's Effigy off the aggro, and just snare the other one. So, almost done with this part. And I'll look for the other guy. There he is. So I'll Agrokite him while root rotting the other one. Soloing these tasks, these Gribble tasks, if you have a box army, will help you as well if you're trying to create a whole army of alts. You can just park them. Like, I have 5 other accounts, and with my main Necromancer, I pretty much leveled up a lot of my alt army here in these Gribble tasks. I just have them just sitting around, following every once in a while. Having a mage help so you can just call out heroes over the rest of your box army. So now this part of the task is done. And the screen froze here for a bit. I don't know what that was about. Maybe to get the named into the instance, which is right there. But I'm not going to bother with him right now. So we're almost complete. We just need to find this last part. So it looks like this part is loot excavation tools from Undead Excavators. But I'll just finish up this last mob. That is a leftover from the other part of the task. Just get my pet out of the way right now, because this part, I don't want my pet messing anything up. So I will pull the first Undead Excavator, and this part is kind of a gamble because the excavation tools can drop from any of these Undead Excavators. It's just random which one it drops from. So this could take either a short amount of time or a long amount of time, depending on your luck. So it didn't drop from this first mob. Try the second one. Root him to the side and start to dot him. Running a little low on mana, so again, Death Bloom. And now on to the next skeleton. The next Undead Excavator. The first few skeletons here are easy to pull because you don't have to split them. So they should come single. But once you start getting to the back of the pack, you will have to do some splitting or just using Rest of Dead. Because luckily, in this case, they're all undead. I think in every version of Scouting Ahead, they're all undead back here. Which makes it easy for a Necromancer to solo. And again, you have all this wide open space, which makes it really easy to solo. So now you might have to use Rest the Dead on these so that there's not an assist. And just pull this guy, he'll come right through the wall. There are two right in here, but they're hard to see. So be careful if you're new to this, they will sometimes assist if you try to pull through them. So it still hasn't dropped, so on to the next few skeletons. And like I said, there's two in here. So I'm just going to Rest the Dead on that one and pull this guy. And somehow my pet got aggro. Sometimes I don't even use my pet for these, for this particular task, scouting ahead, because there really are no summoners. So sometimes I just leave my pet suspended. Sometimes it doesn't even pay to have a pet out because they can ruin the task sometimes if they're out of control. So I either just have my pet just stay feign death or just have regroup at all times. Kind of like when I raid, I never have a pet up, because sometimes there are more problems than they're worth. So on to the next skeleton. Haven't had much luck with the drop so far. And I think I'm just going to ignore the named that's up there. I really don't need the equipment. This video is pretty much just for demonstration. So I'll pull the next skeleton and hope that the tools drop. I remember doing a lot of these, and sometimes the item that I needed wouldn't drop until the very last mob back here. Sometimes it's the last mob, sometimes it's the first mob, sometimes in between. It's all just luck. I'll get line of sight on this guy, or I'll just pull this one instead. Hopefully he'll drop the excavation tools and I can finish this task. It's already been about 40 minutes. And like I said in my last video, if you take the time to research the best spells to use, you can cut the time that it takes you in these things by a lot. Right now I just created this heroic and just threw some spells together in my spell list here. I didn't take the time to find out the best ones. The developers recently linked some spells together or some nonsense, so I'm just guessing right now, but I'm sure I could finish this task faster. And there's a drop. So now when you get the drop, you have to go over to the rock on the left. So this part, right click on it, and that's the update for the last step. Now it's simply going back to the front of the zone for the final hail, and then the quest will be over. And like I said, I'm not going to try to get the named. I'm just going to leave them. So I thought what I would do with this task, which I didn't with the last task, is Pop Lesson of the Devoted, which is the double experience. I don't know if it's here in my hotkeys or not, my hot buttons. I don't see it, so I'm going to look for it in the alternate advancement window, and then I'm going to cast it because it'll give me double experience for the hail, if I can find it here. So now I will do the final hail and the quest will be done, and as you can see, I got 12 AA points. Plus I think I got one earlier. So that is soloing, scouting ahead. The end of the quest. Soon I will have the third task uploaded. That requires some pet tanking. And that will be in, I don't know, a few days maybe. The third task is called Disrupting the Ritual. So everybody have a great day, and I will have another video uploaded soon.